This is the introduction to section 11.6, part 2. And yes, that's right. Section 11.6, part 2 is the last official video of the year. Insert applause. Okay, so this is the last video, but before we end up with the last video that you have to watch this year, we do have a couple problems to take a look at. So, we're going to find the volume here of the combo shape here. We got a cylinder and we have a sphere together, and we're going to find the total volume. So again, we're going to have to split this up into two parts. Cylinder, and you've got the sphere. So we got to find the volume of our cylinder. Volume of our cylinder, pi r squared h. So pi times, in this case, the radius is 5.8 squared, times the height of the cylinder, which is 14. Okay, when I calculate that number, I get 1,479.6 cubic feet. All right, so that's the volume of the cylinder. Okay, so now we got to find the volume of the sphere. Volume of the sphere, we've got 4 pi r cubed times, or divided by 3, so 4 times pi times the radius, which is 5.8 cubed, and we're going to divide that by 3, and when I get that total number, we get 817.3 cubic feet. And when we get that, now you'll notice as you look at your picture, we don't have a whole sphere, it's just a half a sphere. So 817.3 divided by 2, rounded to the nearest tenth, I get 408.7 feet cubed. So now if I take 408.7 and I add it to 1479.6, I end up with a total volume of 1,888.3 cubic feet. Okay, so you're going to get combo shapes like this as well. All right, so let's take a look at this last two. We got find the surface area and volume of the shapes. Okay, so in this case, in the first problem, you've got a cylinder with a half a sphere inside of it. So this is like an indentation. It'd be kind of like a can, the bottom of a can, how it kind of indents up the bottom of a pop can in that case. Okay, so as I look at this guy, I'm going to break this up. Okay, so now as I look at this here, I've got to figure out the cylinder and the sphere. I'm going to find surface area. Now, I've done some work previously. Again, you got to find the lateral area first, which is 2 times pi times 3.3 times 7. Add that lateral area to the, remember, you only need one side in this case. So in this case, for the lateral area on the cylinder, I got 145.1, and I'm going to add that to pi times 3.3 squared, which is going to give me a total of 179.4. Okay, so the surface area of the cylinder is 179.4. Surface area of the sphere. Okay, surface area of the sphere. I've got 4 times pi times 3.3 squared. When I calculate that number, I get 136.8. Now, we don't have a whole sphere, so I have to take that 136.8 divided by 2, and when I do that, I get a total of 68.4. Okay? Now, in order to figure out the surface area, total surface area, even though it indents in the shape, I still want to add these two together. So I'm going to add these two together. The total surface area is going to be 247.7 inches squared. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at the volume now. The volume of the cylinder, I get pi times 3.3 squared times 7 pi r squared h. When I calculate that number, I get 239.7, not 239.5, not 7. So 239.5. Okay. When I calculate the volume of the sphere, I get 4 pi times 3.3 cubed divided by 3. When I do that, I get 150.5, and again, I only have half of a cylinder or a sphere, so I got to divide that by 2, which is 75.3. Okay, now these two, since it indents in, I'm taking volume away from the cylinder. Okay, I'm taking volume away from the cylinder, so I'm going to subtract these two numbers, and when I subtract these two numbers, the total volume is 163.7 inches cubed. Okay? Alright, so now let's take a look here at the cone with a sphere on top. So I want to find the surface area and volume. Now, for the surface area of the cone, I only need to find the lateral area. In order to do that, I've got to calculate the slant height. I don't have the slant height. Now, for shortcut purposes, the slant height is 13.5. I do 4.9 squared plus 12.6 squared equals c squared. Okay, so for the area part that I need of the cone, we only need the lateral area. We don't need the top. So it's pi times 4.9 times 13.5. That's pi times radius times slant height. That's 207.8. Now, for the sphere, I need the surface area. 4 times pi times 4.9 squared, which gives me a total of 301.7. But again, I only need half of it, so I got to divide that by 2. I don't have a whole one. That's 150.9. Now, what do I do with these two numbers? I've got one and the other. I'm going to add those two numbers, and the total surface area becomes 358.7 centimeters squared. Okay, now the volume. Got to find the volume of the cone. Volume of the cone is pi times the radius squared times the height, which is 12.6, divided by 3. When I calculate that number, I get 316.3. Volume of the sphere, 4 times pi times the radius cubed, 4.9 cubed. And then I got to divide that by 3. When I calculate that number, I come up with 492.8. But again, I only have half of it, so I got to divide it by 2, which gives me 246.4. And when I have these two numbers here, I want the cone plus the sphere. The total volume here is 563.2, and in this case, it's centimeters cubed. Okay, this concludes Section 11.6, Part 2. Don't forget to complete your WSQ.